Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the known world. Thank you so much for joining us again to chat to the crowns of the known world across the SCA. My name is Countess Lilya.
And I'm Countess Beatrix, and thank you very much for joining us. Today I'll be doing our acknowledgement. Good nobles, we come here together in the spirit of fellowship, the deepening of our skills, sharing of knowledge, and the shared interest for in the search for truth through experimental archaeology and historical inquiry. It is in this context that I, Countess Beatriz Maria Malatesta, on behalf of my kingdom, acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we gather. We recognise their continuing connection to land and culture and pay our respects to our elders, past, present, and emerging, and the elders from other communities who may be here today. Good morning good afternoon for us. Good evening to you, to yourselves, your majesties. How are you this evening?
We're doing wonderful. We're really happy to be here.
Excellent. So we start off all of our informal interviews with a question about whether you know where your kingdom's name and device come from.
So
I'll leave that one to you.
I'm probably going to get walloped by all of my friends that know all of the stories. I'm not 100% certain where the name comes from. I believe it's Gaelic for the land, which is very precise. The arms, again, I'm not 100% sure of the provenance. I know it has a long and historied, very upstanding history. The field, the golden checky field, which if you know heraldry is quite unusual to have a medal on metal. It actually comes from the tablecloth at the pizza parlor where our earliest members used to spend a lot of time. So they were known for their white and gold checkered tablecloths. And the lion, the rampant lion with the forked tail, comes from Luxembourg, but more specifically off the Lowenbrau beer that they used to drink at the pizza parlor. So I can't speak to who it was. I can't speak to who fought for the heraldry. I just know it was a very austere process of choice.
Pizza and beer sounds like an amazing foundation for a group. Absolutely. So, whereabouts is the Kingdom of Ontier located mundanely?
So Ontier is comprised of, well, it's both Canada as well as the United States, where we have the province of British Columbia, as well as also Washington, state of Washington and Oregon. And I believe there's just a little slip in there in, what is it?
A sliver of Idaho.
Idaho.
A little piece.
Just a little bit there. So is that Coeur d'Alene, such? So
yep.
That area. Yeah. So, and that's generally what it comprised. Used to include Avocal and such as Alberta and everywhere else there across there, but we lost them sadly. So
they were tired of driving 24 hours to an event.
Yeah,
so.
And you couldn't blame them for that. So
we may have heard that a little bit from King Vic.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, he's the king of Ontier that knighted me at the time, but that's a whole other thing. So.
Wow. Oh, everything kind of interlaces. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. With Vic, he's in the middle of most things, so it's what happened.
that does not surprise me, Your Majesty.
So what is your kingdom known for across the known world, apart from Vic?
So it's hard to know what other people know about you, right? So that's really more of a question I would ask you. Our impression is that we're known for being Vikings and a little rowdy, and honestly for our tournament combat. We do an awful lot of tournament combat, and our fighters are known all over.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, a lot of places, especially having gone to Pensick multiple times and such, it's amazing to see the work that's done to put together war groups and otherwise. We don't really have that as much because of the stretched out nature of our kingdom, as well as we tend to really play heavily along the I-5. It's just a major corridor through the different states. And because of that, you don't get the same population density to cluster and make these war units, but also there's a lot of weather, a lot of rain, a lot of snow, that sort of thing. So we end up doing a lot of stuff inside, and that just makes us a bit specialist when it comes to tournament fighting. So
I know going to Pensick, Ontier and Lochac will generally fight with the Western Corridor Collective.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it's a fun unified group that way. It's a lot of fun, somewhat rowdy people, but our kind of people. So
Absolutely. So what events is your kingdom known for?
Well, you've mentioned one of them, Sport of Kings. That one is, it's actually not even a kingdom event. It's sponsored by a local branch, but the amount of people that travel, the huge distances to come to it is really incredible. I've only been once, but it's legendary for its classes and its attendance. Yeah.
And there's a few others. It would be impossible to just label one as the premier or the best or otherwise. We have massive 12th night events, but then again, many kingdoms do. But as far as unique wise, we do have one event, Ursulmus, as far as a tournament, just straight out fighting, just all you can eat sort of event. It's really a massive grind to even get toward the Sweet 16 at the end. So it's pretty well known for that before even Sport of Kings was around. But yeah.
So when are those events generally held?
So Ursulmus is just at the end of January. I believe it's the weekend before the last weekend of January. So 12th night is 2 weeks in. Ursulmus is 2 weeks after that, something like that. And then Sport of Kings.
Sport of Kings is in August every other year. So they are planning one for 2021.
Excellent.
Hopefully.
So for us, for traveling to Pensick, I have been to Sport of Kings, and I had an amazing time. And as you said, the classes and the style of the tournament, and I can see why Ontario is definitely seen as a Viking culture and tournament kingdom from there. But traveling to Pensick and Sport of Kings is generally held the weekend after Pensick. So it does make it a really good travel opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of travel, a lot of going around hitting some major events. Yeah.
Cross country.
Yeah. Well, from Lochac, when you travel overseas, you want to try and make the most of it if you're traveling for the SCA.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a couple of other events. There's one called Collegium, which is it's a newer type of event focused around classes, and it's focused less around hands-on classes, more around academics. So we get keynote speakers, we get really, really expert people that lecture on stuff. So that's becoming a bigger event. We're starting to get guests, but it's not quite as well known quite yet.
So you've been a prince and princess, is that right? And 3 times king in the 15 years that you've been playing, 15 plus years that you've been playing.
Yeah.
You've done some research.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we together, for the most part, started, I think it was around year 2000 or so, roughly around there was actually the mark. But you know how it is, you just kind of hit 1 or 2 events, nothing really too major otherwise. And when you really kind of kick in, I mean, you've got it right about there, about 15 years, where it's just that commitment to go at it. I think that was when I received my award of arms, was kind of 5 years after, 2005, something like that. And it was from Uther, who was king of Ontario at the time, from the west. And I received that at Pensick. For I guess just following him around and making sure that the crown went to bed properly. Right? So, but yeah, so Can't remember how long afterwards that was. Then we won Principality in Thierry. And then after that, it's been 3 crowns now. So.
So do you find it, apart from this being the pandemic reign, as everybody's nicely calling it, have you found that there's a difference to your reigns, or is this the hardest one because it's the most non-hands-on that you've had to be in a very prominent role?
Well, they're all quite different. Principality is obviously quite different than a crown. It's an excellent learning opportunity, and I'm very grateful that we had a chance to reign on a smaller scale before we jumped to a kingdom the size of Antir. And our 3 reigns have been quite different, but for different reasons. This reign, there's been less hands-on, but we've actually had more administrative work during this reign than we have in all of our other reigns combined. And not even just pandemic related, but just in general, this was a very busy reign. Our first crown reign, we really wanted to knock it out of the park. So we hit an event almost every weekend. I think we did 23 events or something.
24, somewhere
Yeah.
there.
We tried to take it slower the next reign and did more. So when we were fighting in this one, I was like, I want to reign again, but can we do just a little bit less? Like, I don't want to ignore any part of the kingdom, but I just like to take it a little slower, be a little more specific on what events we're going to go to.
When you have a kingdom like ours, you have to get onto Google Earth and start to map out all the events throughout the whole thing and just say, did we hit everywhere? Did we at least once everywhere? It's been interesting. There's a lot of logistics behind it. It's very big, and the travel, nonetheless, the weather. I mean, even crossing mountains, you'll get into some snow. Can we get there at this time of the year? There's a lot of that. So it was taxing for the first 2 years, and we loved it. It's exactly what we like to do. But we were going to try and take this one a little bit slower, and now
Not quite this slow.
Really, really unique, of course, with this one. But it's always a pleasure one way or the other. So.
So how long have you been on the thrones?
We stepped up the second week of January.
Yeah.
But we won last September.
Yeah.
So we've been on the thrones
As heirs or as crown for about, just around a year now. So a little over a year.
You currently don't have heirs?
No, we do not. Before we were able to, pretty much as soon as we stepped up, so long before we could even have our crown tournament, that was when everything got a little bit sticky. So we had to cancel events and such. So, and currently just nothing really in sight that we can see right now, but we're hoping for the best as soon as possible.
So I'm going to ask how you both started in the SCA. Like, how did you get introduced to the SCA?
Mine is very easy.
Yeah.
I was seeing a guy. He said, "You got to check out this really cool thing I've done."
Yeah. No, I was just I don't know. It's the same story, and just to more sum up, I was a little kid sitting in the corner listening to my older cousins talk about something they went and did and saw, and all these flags and tournaments and this and banners, and it sounded beautiful. And I was always fascinated and intrigued by that kind of slight, wonder and mystery of that sort of, culture, history, but also even when you get into the fantasy side of it, Tolkien or otherwise, but to find something that was real or whatever we could do was best to recreate real. I really enjoyed that, and kind of got stuck on it. I just went to one event. I chased this guy that I knew down who was telling the story at the time. He had traveled and gone everywhere. I hadn't seen him forever. So finally, when he came back to town, I chased him down. I just grabbed him by his shirt and said, "Just give me a phone number, give me anything. I heard about this thing. Who do I talk to?" And then he gave me a phone number of somebody that he knew quite well. And I called, and it was a little old lady who answered the phone. And it was our quite well-known Baroness Amanda. And she she kind of walked me through the first steps. And to be quite honest, to have somebody like her and anybody at least from our area, nonetheless on tier, probably knows who I'm talking about, Amanda Kendall, to have her walk me through the first steps of what to do at an event where, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better person.
She was actually, her daughter reigned with Duke Eric, who now lives in Lochac. So Eric's first reign was with her daughter, Melissa Kendall. Big titans in the beginning.
We've gotten, I've noticed that we do have quite a few of the on-tier people who have migrated. Duke Eric, Throlfer, so Throlfer and Hella, they're from Spokane. Maybe. Yeah, but
We just see
there's
them.
definitely a culture exchange happening over here.
Oh, yeah. I'm terrible when it comes to names too. It's more faces that I recognize. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't even know if I couldn't even remember her name for the longest time. It's terrible.
Oh wow.
When you start just calling everybody babe. Covers it. So what is your kingdom doing to keep in contact with each other over this kind of isolated time? Like, do you have morning teas happening, or are you like doing online courts?
There's an awful lot going on online. Personally, the kingdom has only had one official court, and then we've had some baronial changeovers. So they were kind of a pre-recorded court. But there has been oodles of classes. We had a gigantic Grand Ithra in September that had, I think, teachers from all but one kingdom. And that one kingdom, I think, was being hit by a hurricane, so they had a fair reason not to show up. There's been, you alluded earlier to the sisters, so Mistress Lochac and Sir Rifkin have been doing interviews, which have been highly popular. Sir Rifkin has been doing a bunch of interviews with dukes, or murder of dukes, I think. And so that's been quite active. We have a bard down from the middle of the kingdom, Mari Nikshvan, who has been doing interviews with people, getting kind of famous people on to boost and have conversations. I know a lot of the baronies have been doing weekly teas and socials. There's just been a lot of classes and unofficial events and kind of unofficial shire and baronial get-togethers online.
We've had a couple of courts. I think we're doing a peerage this afternoon, I think, down here. And there was we've started actually having events now in person, which is good, but they have to be small and, you know, within numbers. So I think there's also a couple of those happening. Bea would probably know better. She's the Kingdom Seneschal at the moment, so she's on top of all of that. So we've been very lucky down here with our how the pandemic has actually affected our kingdom. It's not been too much of an impact, which is good. So what is your favorite part about being crowned, since you've done it 3 times?
You must love it, right?
Yeah.
Or be learners.
Yeah, it's, you know, as a fighter, how could I not love winning? Of course, that's a wonderful thing. And I can't say that it's not a drive, right? But the truth of the matter is, you got to understand why you're there, why you're doing it, what's behind it, and what are you going to do with it after you've taken it, right? And it took a little while to really understand. I got it when we were Prince and Princess. I really understood the moment that you're being given and the spotlight that's being put onto you as, for me, just as a simple fighter, right? I just go and I do my thing that I enjoy, and somehow I get something for it, and it's beautiful. It's a wonderful gift. People celebrate you, and it's great. But to be able to take that spotlight that's put on you and said, hey, look at this guy. Well, no, I want to take that and turn it on somebody else. I want to be able to focus on people in the kitchen making whatever for a feast. They never get seen. They never get talked about. It's unfortunate. It's one of the things. It's part of the job. It's behind the scenes. And that's my job. That's what I need to do and what I love doing. Or the moment where someone, I have no idea who they are. They know me, but I don't know them, unfortunately. And they stop me in a hallway to say, hey, oh, do you have a moment? Can I talk to you? And being able to spend 3 hours just finding a little nook somewhere and sitting down with them and talking to them and giving them my whole night. It's just to see their faces. That's the thing. It's not just about giving out awards per se. A lot of people say that. It's about it giving out moments, even if that moment is private, nonetheless a moment in court. So that's giving back that way, I guess. It's really kind of, I don't know, it's fun. She sees me stroll in 4 o'clock in the morning into the hotel room at some convention center we've rented out, and we've got a meeting at 7 o'clock in the morning or whatever it is, but that's how I want to do it. I want to give it all, give it every last drop, and it feels good when I go home. So
Till the wheels fall off.
yeah.
And is it the same for you, Your Majesty? Is that what you enjoy about being crowned as well?
Yeah. I'm a severe introvert. I recharge by myself. I am not a public person. I don't like being the center of attention at all, which is hilarious if you think about it. So being able to just perform and be the crown for somebody, the first time you walk up to somebody and they're shaking because you recognize them or even to stop to say hello, you realize how important the crown is. And I know how important the crown has always been to me. It's always been quite a revered figure. We have a very deep, strong love for our crown in Ontario. But the power that you hold with that is so incredible. When you walk by and you remember something somebody said online or something, oh, I was looking into oak galls, and you say, hey, how is that oak gall progress going? And they lose their mind because the crown caught their attention, knew who they were, and asked them about it. And it's such a wonderful thing to be able to give to the people, because the people give so much. They give so much time. They give their possessions in forms of largesse. They give gifts. We get ludicrous amounts of gifts. The stuff that people do for the crown is incredible in Ontario. All of our garb is made and given to us. And so to be able to take those gifts and the gifts of love and attention that we get and turn it back on them is just, I would gladly be the center of attention just so I get the chance to turn that back around again. Which is saying a lot because I really hate being the center of attention. I cry when people sing happy birthday, like I just can't handle it. But I really like being able to turn that back.
Yeah, I think we're very similar in that, and it is very much about paying it forward and ensuring those people are recognised for the work and the skills that they have put in, whether it's making garb or it's putting together an event.
Yeah.
I do have a question for you, Your Majesties, and it's about traditions. There is an award that I was honoured to see when I did go to Sport of Kings, and it was about a chain. There was a loss of a member, and that member was recognised in that court.
Yeah, and that was done by my hand. It's a difficult, and it's a bit of a, I mean, that honestly is a very difficult order to discuss. It's a weird thing because you'd hesitate to say award even, right? Because it's about, it is typically about a member of the kingdom that either protected or tried to a real life danger, a real life situation, tried to resolve it or protect somebody from it, usually harm. And in this case, it was brought to us that someone had, outside of an SCA event, had tried to intercede in a situation where someone was being attacked, and they lost their life. The order itself, it's very specific. A lot of times there's a lot of wording that's very specific about how something should be done. And it was definitely my choice to decide that this was to be awarded, I guess, award, I struggle with that word, despite the very strict wording of how this order is supposed to be, had somebody enter into it. So I believe that any amount of care for others, any amount of protection of others, in that sort of sense, deserves recognition. And that is what that was about. It was painful. It was very difficult, especially with the family members that had attended as well. And it's something that I don't think you don't want to glorify something like that in the sense of, the next person saying, oh, I want to do this, or I want to get into a situation that they don't need to. You don't want that to glorify a situation like that. But if it happens, when that happens, I believe recognition is possibly an important thing. So.
Yeah, it was very humbling to see that award, that person admitted to that order, as opposed to being awarded. I think it's the first time I've seen that level of I'm not sure of the word, but
Gravitas?
Sorry?
Gravitas? Where gratitude is given to somebody for their deeds done? Like,
yeah, and it's both inside and outside of the SCA.
It's it's one of those things where I do enjoy, I pride myself on being able to take the moments, instead of giving out an award and moving to the next one, but really sitting on that moment with the people that are receiving whatever award it may be. And that one brought to me, and that I believed in recognizing. It was difficult to know exactly the right way to present that, exactly the right way to address that moment. But if not more so than any, I believe that deserves the moment to be spoken of and to be reflected on.
Yeah, and I think that's quite important for so many to note that it is the moment, whether it's admitting somebody to an order, as we were just discussing, or somebody's first AOA. It's getting their AOA. And I say first AOA because we have a gentle in Lochac who has 3.
We have many people with multiple different awards. It happens. The tracking can be difficult.
I have 2 Kingdom grant level awards for arts.
Wear them like earrings.
Well, it's the grant level award for arts is called the Jambe de Lion, so the hand of the lion, right? So I've got 2.
Definitely do things.
For 2 different fields, or was it just that it had been that it had been overlooked that you had received the first?
I was overlooked, definitely.
Yeah, I will say it's a very large kingdom with a lot of different people. It stretches a long distance, so you can't necessarily know everybody directly. And I've taken it as a personal job to keep the bookings of that anytime that we are the crown, because those moments you don't want to miss that. You don't want to make that mistake. And I want to take real care that everybody's taken care of properly.
We do deep research. I don't know how award recommendations and those sorts of things happen in other kingdoms, but We receive award recommendations from anyone. It can be through email or through our portal. We really prefer the portal. But it doesn't check if the person already has the award. So we take it as a personal thing. Some crowns don't have the bandwidth to be able to investigate every single one, so they have a person who does that. We check every single one from an AOA to the Lion, which is our lifetime award in Ontario. We look, we make sure under any possible name that this person has not already received that award. We also make sure, you know, if they're being offered or suggested for a grant of arms, we just check to see if they have an award of arms yet. We try to make sure we've got their name right. We will do all kinds of weird stalking and research to see if we can see them with the token of the award on somewhere else, just because we really want it to be important. We do research on who they are, what they've done. We have notes. So when they come up, we can speak knowledgeably about each person. And we do all of this research ourselves, and we're ready so that we can give them that moment, because there's nothing worse than having someone come up and you give them that moment and they're already wearing the award. And you're like, golly, somebody thought you were important enough to recommend you twice.
Yeah.
I've had that moment a couple of times. Yes. Yeah. And so after those moments, you're like, yes, definitely need to do all of that research.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, and he does the vast majority of it. You think people often assume that the queen or the consort does most of that work. He does all of the court work.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is fun though too, because you do have the opportunity where you learn so much about somebody. You're just reading it. It's almost like reading a book about some character, or otherwise you want to meet them. So if anybody ever sees this crown, walk up to them and say, hey, how's it going, blah, 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 and I just start talking to them and I just make friends that day or whatever, there's a good chance I'm doing research too. And 3 or 4 events later on, you might see an award for that person, because I just wanted to get to know them. I wanted to hear their voice. I wanted to talk to them about their pursuits. And I'm not being too obvious about it, but you know, there's a good chance if for some reason I'm making friends with you, there's a reason. So.
And now every timid person in your kingdom is going to be running for the hills every time you come to talk to them. Perfect. It'll be like a game. So what are your proudest moments in the SCA so far?
I've got one.
Yeah. Being able to finally show her that I was right, that I knew that I had something and I could put her on that throne, for putting up with me for so long, standing by me and believing in my vision, that I was able to put her there, put her on this throne.
Now I can't say anything. It's all going to sound like turds after that. I always believed him.
There's definitely an honor when somebody sees your inspiration and your virtue and can actually show you that in a public forum, like winning a crown. So yes, I think that's perfectly said when it's your partner, that, you know, there's that moment of, what have you done? And they go, I want everybody to know how wonderful you are. So Your Majesty, do you have a proudest moment?
Sorry.
I have a lot of proud moments. The one that stands out that's most recent, I was recently elevated to the Order of the Laurel. I was put on vigil actually at the crown tournament that we won. The Laurels actually hunted him down and asked him not to fight because they were tired of waiting, because we won. And then we had a couple of months off, and then we won again. And then we'd had just a couple more months this time, we won again. And they were like, come on. So the crown was like, you know what? No, we're doing it right now. So before they crowned me crown princess, they put me on Vigil to be a laurel, which was very incredible. It was a hell of a day, I'll tell you. But for my elevation ceremony, my laurel was able to come, and she's from Abacal, so she's quite far away. And a few years previously, before we won the first time, she'd asked me to make her duchy scroll and the county scroll for her husband, because they'd reigned in Abacal. And I had been working on this. It was my magnum opus. It was a full to scale replica of the Lindisfarne Gospels done in the duchy scrolls. It was all hand period. I learned how to do the period take. Like, it was the best thing I've ever created. And I was able finally to knuckle down as crown princess and a vigilant and get it done. And I surprised her with it during my ceremony, and she cried, which I guess isn't really that hard to make Inga cry, but I made her cry, and that made me really proud, because she was very happy. So not nearly as touching, but that was a pretty big problem.
You handed on your one of your masterpieces to somebody that you love. That's pretty impressive. Like, not everybody gets to do that. So yeah. I think that's pretty impressive as a proud moment.
Yeah, it's wonderful. There have also been people who I've seen start up who've been recognized with peerages or fantastic awards. So I've maybe helped them with garb when they've started, and now they've become a laurel, or I've, showed them the ropes on a retinue, and now they're a pelican. And those are also really proud. You're like, gosh, I saw you when you were a baby, and now they found the love. So those are also quite proud. But
so I'm going to ask you about your personas. How did you choose them?
This would be a good time to ask whether we have personas per se. So, it's been an interesting journey when it comes to personas. I had a different name to begin with. I didn't know what I wanted for armor or clothing or this, or also it doesn't help when you're asked to find a persona and you're early on in the SCA and you don't really know the cultures, you don't really know the times, you don't know that information. And you do have people that can help you, but it's really just kind of a picture you're getting. You don't live it, you don't know it to know whether you'll like it or not. So, but I have to say, I struggled with the fact that there's so many Vikings in Antir. I had to find something else. They had to do something else. And of course, we're doing a terrible job right now with what we're wearing, representing a Viking kingdom, if you want to call it that. But yeah, I honestly can't necessarily say that I have a persona. I went for something like 12th century Breton, because it's just a mix of everything in that area. And it was just kind of a cheater sort of thing, right? And as we've gone on, especially with our principality reign, and really even more so with our crown reigns, we've had so many people come to our aid to make clothes for us or otherwise, and just give us so many wonderful things. All we are really, and it's a really wonderful part, is being able to be just kind of a billboard for their work, the clothing that they make for us or otherwise, right? And just show it off. And okay, today's going to be late Italian, and today's going to be Norman, and just to be able to switch and move and do that. The name at best is about the only thing that I have for persona. And so she was more solid on that before I was, really. And of course, being, I don't know, maybe I'm selling it a little short, but as a fighter, I didn't really worry about that too much at first, right? So
for a long time, I thought I was doing the SCA wrong because I didn't have a persona. When we started, there was tales and people had stories about being sold to a merchant and living with the Roma and being in the courts. And I thought, gosh, that's a lot of story. And I just wasn't interested in inventing that story. It wasn't my geek. And I thought I was kind of doing it wrong. And I found, I went to a persona class, and the lady running it said, you would look great in 12th century garb. I said, all right, I'm 12th century. Easy peasy. I hadn't picked a name for years. And then it became clear that probably reigning in the principality was probably in our future. We were doing fairly well in tournaments. He is a hot stick. And I was like, he told me, you're going to need a name before we win, which was fair. So I went and I picked a name. And the make-believe was never really super important for me. So I picked a name that I would answer to. And I thought, well, Helene or Helene is really close to Heather. Like it's about as close. I stand a chance of hearing that in a crowd. Okay, so Helene is pretty good. People should be able to pronounce it. And then I looked around in France in the 12th century and I was like, Anjou? Heralds can say Anjou. I'm not going to mess anybody up, right? So I picked Helene d'Anjou as a name, just so it could be pronounced. And I was like, I've got an area and I've got a name. Turns out when I went to register my name, I've actually picked the name of a saint. So I had to add another word in to get my name. It's Helene Lyon d'Anjou. But other than that, I didn't get much further than just a name and kind of an area. And it wasn't until quite a bit later that I realized that's okay. Not everybody is into that part of the SCA. You know, not everybody is into making garb. Some people aren't into heraldry. Some people aren't into fighting. Some people are only into cooking, and that's okay. So I don't feel bad, but I don't have a persona or a story. I wish I did because they sound really cool, but I just haven't really gotten into that part of it. I'm more into the experimental archaeology type stuff. So.
Yep. Did you know where Lochac was before we kind of got in contact with you and said, hey, come have a chat?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's been honestly just a dream just to go down and visit as it is. But we did know where, but we did have a wonderful experience at Pensick meeting your crown at the time, Stefan and
Brownman.
Yeah, Brownman. So yeah, they're pretty special. They're pretty wonderful. So I've had some interactions with them from a distance as well, a couple of videos and such. So
His Grace caught me in one of the aforementioned times of questionable decisions and made a video about it and shared it on the internet.
Ah.
dance video. Yeah. So
Their personalities balance each other very well. Him being an actor by trade, Brahman's very reserved, but is very sneaky with her sense of humor underneath it behind closed doors. So yes, they're an amazing couple for sure. We have a lovely female knight where during her knighting ceremony, he did a speech where he brought in a whole load of Taylor Swift lyrics into the so if you ever get the opportunity to see it, it's hilarious because there is just like she's kneeling and you can see her sitting there and then suddenly she's kind of gone, oh, and as he tries to get as many in there in his speech as possible. It's beautifully done. Beautifully done. So obviously, like you've met Stefan and Bronwyn, is there any other things that you've heard about our populace that you want to clarify? Because we've had a couple of things about crop bears and like Tasmanian devils. Is everything poisonous? That was another one. It's like, no.
I haven't heard too much about specific people. There's obviously many tropes about how everything in Australia can kill you, so forth. Mostly my impression of the people of Lochac has been incredibly friendly, but I suppose that really goes for basically anywhere in the SCA. We're all here having fun. So I've always felt a little intimidated by the level of garb. I don't know you all cooked a little bit longer in the talent pool or what, but there's some incredible art that comes out of Lochac and incredible garb. Yeah. I don't know much about the fighting. You could speak to that.
Well, I don't know much about the fighting either. I haven't been able to fight anyone from Lochac. We always seem to be fighting with them. So, but Stefan's definitely on the list. That's for sure. So,
well, we're hopeful to have a bit of a contingent coming over for Sport of Kings next year, all going well, and possibly with borders open.
mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yeah. But you know, we have had a few people that are within our kingdom and have visited our kingdom as ambassadors, really, to show what your kingdom is like. So as we mentioned, we have Duke Eric and Sothropa and Daskalahala. And we have had many visitors come across. Like earlier, we were discussing by Countess Cethric, who came across and surprised us at 12th night, just as this random guy who turned up.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
He's a wonderful ambassador.
Absolutely.
The Norse beads that I have a set of, and I gave a set to you, Beatrice, and you've passed it on to other queens. They actually come from the Kingdom of Ontir originally. So,
yeah,
I just gave, yeah.
Incredibly generous as well.
So, Your Majesty, one of the things that we do ask is what your favorite story to tell is. So if you were sitting around a campfire, what would be one of your favorite no shit there I was stories?
It doesn't have to be PG.
Mine always are. I don't know about hers. I can't tell what's going on in her head though.
To be honest, one of my favorite stories to tell is the story from His Grace Stefan and the noodle. I thought I'd escaped it, but I guess I'll tell the story. As I mentioned before, I'm very introverted. And as you know, when you're crown, everyone's looking at you. And your retinue is looking at you all day. So even when you're standing around eating your lunch, they're looking at you. And I don't know what to do with myself a lot of times. I have a lot of what do I do with my hand moments. So one day I just kind of moved and like moved my arms, you can't really see. And they called me a noodle. And so this kind of developed into a sort of a noodle dance. And I would just do it to be ridiculous, you know, amongst close friends, people that knew me, people I trusted. And I was at Penzig one night and we're having dinner down at the lovely Chez Argent, which is incredibly gourmet, delicious food. And His Grace Amalric brought me a beer, but he didn't just bring me a beer, he brought me a lot of beer. And I drank it all because it was really good. And we went down to the West Kingdom Viking Luau party. And I began to teach anyone who would listen the noodle dance. And I had a whole spiel about getting warmed up because noodle related injuries were unfortunate. And I taught His Grace Stefan, His Majesty at the time, the noodle dance. He said, Your Majesty, when I go back to Lochac, I'm going to a dance symposium and I'm going to share the noodle. And I said, you had better, or I'm going to be very disappointed, Your Majesty, because that's what you do when you've had a lot of beer. And he went down and he taught the noodle dance and recorded it over a period dance. So everybody was doing the giant circle and the noodle. And then he posted it on Facebook for the whole world to see. So that was one of my both cautionary tales about what you do in front of whom, and also one of my favorite international incident stories. So I tell that story a lot because it made me laugh really hard.
I like the terminology international incident. I may need to apologize to a lot of people at Penzig.
Yeah, they happen.
Yeah.
It was good beer.
Funny, I tend to be the sober one, so my stories, if anything, have a little more more of a simple nature to them. I get to watch her have all the fun, I think, is what it is. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's there's so many different things to pick from. It's one of the things that's amazing about the SCA. It's you're living in a storybook. What can you do but just go from chapter to chapter to chapter with all these amazing events? If you really open yourself up to it, you're in this magical world. Honestly, one of the moments that I had was the last time we were at Pensick and we were at Chez Argent. I just stood back and I was watching everybody, and we were the Crown at the time. I was just watching everybody interact, all the characters and the people, and otherwise, and I realized, and I'm a huge lover of Tolkien. The horrible part is that I read very slowly, so it takes me a long time to get through all of that, but I picture it all. I have this illustration in my mind, very, I guess, poetic or otherwise. I just love to be able to saturate in that. And I just stood back and just kind of faded into a shadow, and just watched everybody that I was there with, my retinue, the various different crowns that had come before. Again, His Grace Amalric was there, wonderful, wonderful man with all the joy in the world. And I realized this short, just a little bit of a, round-bellied man sort of thing, just with all the life you could ever ask in a human being. And right there, I was looking at Tom Bombadil, just dancing around the table, playing with people, talking, singing, doing this, bringing everybody up. And then all the other people, there was someone there with a guitar playing, and I'm looking at some bard. If you play any role-playing games or otherwise, if you want to be in that world, it's there for it. It might not be fantasy and magic per se, but you get to see that moment where I'm standing there in this tavern. And all these moments where you try to hope you could be there, it's right in front of you. And it was beautiful just to watch these people interact and realize that in the weirdest way, I was in such a foreign environment, and yet at the same time, I was home. It was, very moving. So those moments happen all the time, and I catch myself watching them all the time. And I'm such a fan of this thing that we do, no matter where we are. So I don't know if I could really pick a moment, but that's the thing. I'm living each one of them.
Yeah, I absolutely understand. It's wherever you are, it's the SCA and it's the chosen family, and it is, you do feel like you are home wherever you go.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the second attempt that we had to interview you. And when we posted the first one of the comments on the interview was that you were probably one of the top 10 fighters of the known world, right? Somebody posted that. And we had a moment where we've gone, how does one live up to that accolade? So I'm going to ask you that question.
It's wow. You run scared from it. you do everything. A lot of people they've made this comment about me for a long time, that when I'm standing in the lineup for a processional or when I'm preparing to fight, I get this look on me. I'm gonna kill somebody, right? It's this evil, dark, and I've been known for that for a long time. And thankfully, the opportunity to sit the thrones has shown people that, there's a different person there too. That's just when I'm going to work, right? But yeah, you try to bring things. I don't even know the best way to put it, but I do that because I'm terrified. I'm scared. I am not confident necessarily, right? It's pushing away those butterflies. It's pushing away that fear of not performing, of letting somebody down, that there's somebody who's watched me for a couple of years now. Maybe they look up to me and that I'll just flub the tournament and be out in 2 or something, right? It doesn't matter where I am. There's a new thing to run scared from, quite frankly, a new fear in my mind that I won't be enough. And I think that's it. It's that I need to keep chasing it. Otherwise, I'll let myself down. I'll let other people down. And that's driven me past and past and past thresholds and plateaus that I never knew I would even reach in the first place. All I wanted to do was put her on a throne, show her that I knew what I was talking about, that I had something inside. It was this burning desire, and I burnt out a bunch of people that tried to help me along the way because they didn't understand. At least that's what I said to myself, right? There was something in me, but to be able to live up to it, I don't know that I actually am. There's so many other people that I look up to and that I would say come before me for sure. Maybe I could beat them. I don't know, but in the end, it's this beautiful world where, I mean, you can't be certain of that sort of thing, for one thing, right? And that could end anytime soon. I could be terrible now. Who knows? No fighting because of COVID. Right? So, but yeah, there's other people that I'd put in front of me for sure. And I think that reverence for them is what I'm more about, so.
That is a wonderful answer, and I can honestly say, having interviewed you now, you're both very much enough. That you are spectacular in the way that you interact about the SEA and how you've sold your kingdom to our kingdom, and how it's kind of brought it at a very humble level to kind of look at what you give and not what you're getting back, but what you're giving out. So thank you both very much. That was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
So we're running.
That's the end. That's our time.
Yeah, we could talk to you for a lot longer. An hour goes very quickly, very, very quickly. So thank you both very much. I am going to let B say the final farewell because I talk a lot. You may have noticed. But thank you both very much.
Thank you, Your Majesties, and thank you to everybody who's joined us over the last 6 weeks with our Crowns Between the Roses interviews. As we said, King Christian and Queen Helene are the last crown that we are interviewing. However, our interviews are not finished. Please keep an eye on our Facebook page, like and share it, as we will be having some more interviews coming up over the next week, where Countess Lilya may be under the pump with some of these questions and some others. So please keep an eye out and take care, everyone. Stay safe in COVID. And thank you very much for sharing knowledge and making that our world just that little bit smaller and a little bit bigger at the same time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.